I'm Kristi from Wholecloth Patterns. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make double fold straight grain fabric tape. We use this technique in the Wholecloth Morris Tote sewing pattern, and I'll link to this pattern in the notes below the video. For the Morris, we use the fabric tape to finish the quilted edges of the bag, like around the front pocket and the top edge. On the interior, we use it to finish the edges of the quilted pocket and to bind the side seams of the bag. It makes a nice clean finish on the inside of your bag, and it's a great opportunity to mix prints and add a little bit of personality to your finished bag. I'm going to talk a little bit about the best kind of fabric to use for your binding and the different types of binding. So if you would like to skip straight to the action, you can use the timestamps in the notes below the video. Now, let's get started. We'll start with a lightweight woven fabric like quilting cotton or a cotton shirting. You'll want to use natural fibers like cotton or linen, something that will hold the creases really nicely after ironing so that the binding keeps its shape all on its own. Lightweight fabric is best because we're making a whole bunch of layers after we fold up the fabric, and bulky fabrics make really bulky binding. For this tutorial, we're going to focus on straight grain binding that's cut either parallel or perpendicular to the grain of the fabric. And the grain of the fabric is parallel to the selvage edge of your fabric. That's the machined edge of the fabric. The other main type of binding is bias cut binding, which is cut at a 45-degree angle to the grain, and it has quite a bit of stretch. So here I have some bias binding, and you can see when I pull on it, it has a lot of give. It's kind of elastic, and that stretch makes it well suited for going around odd shapes or curved seams, versus the straight grain binding, which results in a very rigid, stable strip of fabric. So when I pull on this straight grain binding, it doesn't have any give. This stability makes it perfect for long straight seams and square corners, which is what we have in the Morris Tote. All you need to make straight grain binding is the lightweight woven fabric. I'm going to use this lightweight denim because it's easy to tell the right side from the wrong side, a ruler, something to mark the fabric with, scissors, and an iron. I'm going to position my fabric so that the wrong side is facing up. First, we need to find the grain of our fabric. I could just use the selvage edge to do this and fold my fabric over parallel to the selvage because I know that this is the grain of the fabric. But I'm using this offcut of fabric that I've already made a couple of things out of, and I think it's more efficient to use this fabric by cutting it across the grain. I'm just going to start by making a loose fold perpendicular to my selvage edge. And I'm just going to look and see if it looks like the grain of my fabric, and I'm going to give a little bit of a tug along the fold that I'm making. And if it doesn't have any give, then I'm in good shape. When I'm confident that I've found the grain of my fabric, I'm going to iron in this crease. And I want to make sure that my fold is at least 1 inch from the raw edge of the fabric. I've gone past that here because I have this uneven edge and I want to square it off along the grain of my fabric. Next, I'm going to use my ruler and tailor's chalk to mark a line 1 inch from the fold the whole way along the edge of the fabric. I'm making 1/2 inch binding, so I'm basing this measurement on double the 1/2 inch finished width of my binding. If you're making binding that's a different finished width, you can easily change this dimension. Next, I'm going to cut along the line that I've made to make a 1 inch folded strip. Here's my finished 1 inch strip of fabric. You can see it opens on one side and it's folded on the other side. At this point, if I need a piece of binding that is longer than what I have, I can easily join 2 pieces together. So here I have another 1-inch folded strip of fabric, and I'm going to open up both strips of fabric and then overlap them at one end with the right sides together. You want to make a 90-degree angle between the two pieces. And you can see where the fabric overlaps, it kind of makes a square. So I'm going to sew from one corner of this square down to the other corner of this square where the two pieces of fabric overlap. Here you can see the line of stitching across that square where the fabrics overlap. And we go from having this 90-degree angle of fabric to when we open up the seam, we have a continuous strip. When the seam is opened up, you can see that it cuts diagonally across the strip of fabric. This reduces the bulk of the seam when we fold up the bias binding, and then you don't end up with a bump in your finished project. Now we'll grade the seam allowance to about 1/4 inch and press it to one side. Next, I'm going to refold the strip along the center crease and give it a little bit of a press where I pressed the seam allowance. We're going to make 2 more folds into the fabric. I'm going to open our strip back up and then fold one long edge toward the wrong side so that the raw edge just about touches the center crease. Then I'll iron that fold into the fabric the whole length of the strip. Now we're going to repeat that process with the other edge of the fabric. We'll fold this edge toward the wrong side until it just about touches the center crease, and then we're going to press this fold into the fabric the whole length of the strip. Here are those 2 folds that we just made. We'll fold it back in half along the center crease and give it another good press so it really holds its shape while we're working with the binding. And we're done. There's our finished double fold 1/2 inch straight grain binding. Perfect for making a completely customized Wholecloth Morris tote. Thanks for following along with me today. Be sure to check out the notes below the video for all the links from today's tutorial, and click subscribe to follow the Wholecloth Patterns sewing channel.